Good evening. Good evening. My name is Preeti Vyas. I'm the CEO of Amar Chitrakatha Private Limited. And today I am extremely happy to welcome you all to the special book launch of Millennia of Sea Travels. This is the first book in a three-part series, The Naval Journey of India, created in association with the Indian Navy. The series takes a detailed look at India's naval history and provides a deep insight into the lives of our men and women in white. It has been an absolute honor and privilege to collaborate on this unique and inspiring project with the Indian Navy. And we are really excited to be hosting this event today. We are really very proud of this beautiful book that has finally got ready. And to share more about the book, I'd like to invite Neil Paul. He's our group commissioning editor to join us and tell us about the journey of this book. So welcome, Neil.
Hi, Preeti. Hi. Hello, everyone on Facebook and YouTube. This is such a pleasure to be here this evening with all of you. And such an exciting time to be here because this book is absolutely wonderful and so close to my heart from having worked on this.
So, what is the book about, Neil? Tell us a little bit about it.
Preeti, I think it's best to show something, no? How about we show a quick teaser for everyone and then
Let's do
talk
that.
about it? Yes? Is Birbal around? Birbal?
Birbal's always around. That looks absolutely fabulous, Neil. Congratulations to you and the entire team at ACK that put this book together.
Yes, it's absolutely wonderful. Actually, so quickly, if I can briefly tell you what this book is about. It is a wondrous journey which starts at the very beginning, and it explores India's maritime history. So, book one is about India's maritime history.
So, what do you mean
Um,
by very beginning? Like how much in the beginning are we talking here?
okay, so how about we see some panels, Preeti, and
Wow,
I'll show you
I love seeing
exactly
panels. Okay.
how in the beginning we're talking about. All right. So this book follows Commodore Sagar, who is the gentleman on the right, if you can see it, and his grandson Bharat, as they build a small little raft and they take a journey through Indian history. And when I say at the very beginning, we're going right at the very beginning,
Oh
which
my
is
goodness.
with
Okay. Please do get
Pangaea
the start.
and Laurasia and Gondwana and literally the creation of India.
Wow.
Um, and then we go through right from the beginning, the rudimentary boats down to the Indus Valley civilization or the Harappan civilization, through Hindu history and stories from the Puranas and the first few bits of trading that happened across, including trade that started coming from abroad. And I'm going very quickly, but resistance from Indians. This is, of course, I don't know if you can see the two little ships on the side. This is Kanoji Angre's naval forces. That is Kanoji Angre on the left. And there's so much more, Preeti. So We are really excited about this book. It actually
I
takes
must say that the art is absolutely stunning. It is so gorgeous. Like you can just sit and stare at each of these panels. So, Neil, what has the journey of putting this book together been like? I know you started at the beginning of the pandemic, so it's been really quick. And share some anecdotes or what were the highlights of the creation process of the book itself?
So honestly, I studied history for 3 years in college, but never did I get this deep into history. This was absolutely it was such an extraordinary journey to begin with. From talking to the gentleman that you will meet very very soon, and the heavy research that went into that. To a lot of things that we at Amachita take for granted, which is finding references and things like that, which we had to kind of dig fairly deep to make sure that the artwork looked spectacular and as correct as possible.
I
Um,
think it's also a very challenging book because it starts right from literally the beginning of time almost and brings it almost still Indian independence, right? So it's a huge, I mean, it's a very massive scope that you're covering through 32
and
pages.
Absolutely, and 32 pages in that kind of that speed itself is just incredible. And So yes, kudos to everybody across the team. There was a lot of people internally and externally involved. Some fantastic artists who worked on this project, and it's been a truly wonderful experience working with the Navy itself, especially if I may the Naval History Project and the Maritime History Society, and they are truly so involved in this project and have brought out so much of this glorious maritime history that we show in this book.
So I know all of you readers who are watching and are wondering where they can read the book. So you can download the Amachita Katha ACK Comics app from iTunes or the Android Play Store. And as a very very special offer for the next 2 days, that's 18th, 19th, and 20th, we are offering the book as an absolutely free read to commemorate the launch of this book. So please make sure that you don't miss out on this amazing opportunity to read the entire book free. Download the app today, enjoy reading it. The printed version of the book will also be out in the month of January. It is under production right now, so we will have it out by Jan. And I think now, Neil, I think our readers, our viewers are very, I'm sure they really want to meet the naval officers behind the project. And so let's bring them on. And before that, while we do that, let's have a quick break, Birbal, and then bring them on. Hello, hello, welcome back. To make this book launch extra special, we thought it was interesting to have an exclusive conversation with representatives from the Indian Navy about their experiences, their favorite life stories, their favorite stories and life in the Indian Navy. So please join me in welcoming our esteemed guests. Commodore Shrikant Kesnur. Commodore Kesnur, ex-MDA, has spent more than 34 years in the Navy. He has been captain of two frontline ships of the Navy. He has done a diplomatic tenure abroad in East Africa. A Navy and maritime historian. He has a PhD from Mumbai University, 5 other postgraduate degrees. He's been the lead author and chief editor of 9 books and several journals and monographs for the Navy. Commodore Kesnur, you look far too young to have done all this, right? I want to know your age, anti-aging recipe here.
Amar
Uh,
Chitra Katha.
Absolutely the right answer for today. Next, I would like to introduce Commodore Odatul Johnson. Commodore Odatul Johnson has been a maritime professional for 38 years and is presently the director and head of research at the Maritime History Society. With vast naval operational and research experience, he's an acknowledged speaker, researcher, and trainer in maritime governance and nautical knowledge, in addition to being a sought after research supervisor. He is author of Timeless Wake, a book on Indian naval contribution in World War II, and is spearheading over a dozen research projects. Welcome to the show, Commodore. It's wonderful to work with you. I know we met a few months back, and the amount of support and help and just the amount of sheer knowledge that you have brought to the table has been really wonderful for us.
Thank you, Preeti. You and Neil have been fabulous. Wonderful to be here.
Thank you. Captain Durai Babu, Captain M. Durai Babu, NM from Indian Navy, has completed about 25 years of service in the Navy. He has also commanded 3 ships with extensive sea service. He's an electronic warfare and communication specialist, awarded the Nausena Medal for Gallantry in Action in the tsunami of 2004 in the Andaman Islands, and also been awarded the Chief of Naval Staff Recommendation for exemplary work in the International Fleet Review 2016 in bringing out 3 publications. He has MPhil and MSc degrees in Defense and Strategic Studies, and other MSc in Telecommunications. Again, the same question. I want to know what you guys are having for breakfast every day, because you are definitely packing in far more in a 24-hour day than any of us normal lay human beings are.
Just another day's work in the Navy. Thank you, Ms. Preeti.
Thank you so much for joining us. We have a few questions for you. Starting off with a question for each of you. You are all naval officers. So what set you on the path as historians in the Naval History Project and the Maritime History Society?
Commodore Kesner, you want to start with that? And then
okay, you're throwing the ball at me.
Yes.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, young children. Wonderful to be with you all, and thanks a lot to Amar Chitrakatha for making this possible. Very quickly, Commodore Johnson and I are contemporaries. We began our career in the Navy together, though he has a bit of head start in the maritime world. Captain Durai and I have been shipmates subsequently. I guess the thing that's common to all of us in some ways, of course, they will also sort of follow with this answer, are 3 or 4 things. First is that I think in the Navy, there's an instant recognition of the need for a knowledge of history, whether it's internalized or a little bit more. It's a part of your growing up and a part of your sort of career thing to be interested in history, because a naval officer is interested in matters of the world and globe and things about how the world affects us. The second is that, curiously enough, when we joined, we found out that India had such a great maritime history, but very little of it was actually studied by us when we were growing up. So there seemed this big gap between what was known in the maritime world and what was not known outside. And the third thing, of course, is that I think we have been mentored by wonderful people. Admiral Avati readily comes to mind. He's someone both Johnson and I regard as our guru, as our mentor. So there were these small organizations like MHS, which Commodore Johnson is helming now, which encouraged our pursuits of history when we sat and listened to some of those talks. So I guess the encouragement that the Navy gave us, a sense of wonder about the maritime world, is what drove us into maritime and naval history, and the great achievements of our maritime past in the Navy, which had still not been noted or noticed outside. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Commodore Johnson, your response to that?
Great.
Not response.
Yeah, great. So let me put a good friend, Commodore Kesnur, has mentioned the 2 gurus, and I would say they are the ones who set me on the path. 2 gentlemen who are no longer there, 20 days apart in their birth. Oracle Master from Kondoti, Malappuram, my father, and Manohar Prahlad Avti, also no more. And these 2 people have been inspiration at different points of time. My father used to take me around on a cycle, and he had a repertoire of stories, from which then I graduated to a book of Ships in the Sea and which other comic other than Amar Chitrakatha. So, that excitement about storytelling was always there. But specifically coming to the Navy, I think our journey at sea, my few years before in the Merchant Navy and then through the Navy, we've seen the sea, we've seen stories happen as we have traveled. So when you see various things underwater, when you see things happening, you want to talk about it. And the very opportunity the Navy gave to share stories, in addition to the mentors who asked us to read about it. So for me, whenever I had an opportunity, it is easy to talk to maybe other naval officers. But when I got a couple of opportunities to talk to grade 4 people, that's when I realized the story has not only to be read, but to be made simple and shared. And I want to thank the Amar Chitrakatha team. You've been amazing. You've done this great work. And I already told Preeti I will borrow the other Neil, that is her son, and I think he likes the book, and that's what motivates us to make the story alive. Thank you.
Preeti, I think you're on mute.
Durai.
But
Sorry,
yeah,
Captain Roy, what about you?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Preeti. Mine, I mean, both the senior officers have had fabulous gurus, as they said, and my gurus are these people, more so with Commodore Case Note, with whom I've been partnered
Captain, can you
before.
speak up a little bit? We are not able to hear you very clearly.
I'll just increase the mic a bit. How am I now?
Much
How am I
better.
now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. As I was saying, of course, both the senior officers had their gurus, and I have my gurus in these two senior officers. More so with Commodore Kesnur, with whom I have worked before. And if you say why I delve into history, it's very simple. It gives the answer as to why we are what we are in the day we are. And that's only because of history. I like reading a lot right from childhood. And when I say I like reading a lot, of course, in the repertoire of books, you don't miss Amar Chitrakatha. It's been a sort of informal history, not in the classroom, but probably much more popular of a way of reading history. And with that, it has just grown on me to read more. And on the background, I've been more of a naval historian after I've started working with Commodore Kesno. And definitely, we've now formed this naval history project in which we are writing another segment of the Indian Navy's history. So, as and when we got collaborated with the Amar Chitra Katha, I mean, it was excitement all throughout, trying to write the Navy story or India story in the first book, the way the children would relate to it, and not for a researcher or some serious academic study. So it
Correct.
was fun all the way. Thank you very
Right.
much.
So I have a question for you, Commodore Kesno. That what attracted the Indian Navy? What was the reason to do a comic book on maritime history?
I guess again, this sort of originates from many sort of spring wells, so to say. I think one of the very strong ideas came from Johnson and his team, who for long have been toying and have been in the business of disseminating maritime history through Admiral Avati and otherwise, who have sort of wondered how to reach across. And I think this seemed like a great sort of opportunity and great way to do it. And Johnson would have more stories about how this crystallized when he was talking to Admiral Avati. From my side, I guess the call was when we got it from naval headquarters. I was actually sitting in a plane heading to Kochi, I think, and I suddenly got a call from Admiral Das Gupta, who was then the controller of personal services, and he says, quickly answer me, what do you think is the idea of, how do you think is the idea of Amar Chitrakatha comics in the Navy? And I shouted, brilliant, wonderful. And I suddenly saw that the guys sitting next to me, they were wondering what had happened. So it was a sense of exultation that an idea that seemed a very, in retrospect, a very obvious one, but an idea that was phenomenally interesting to take history across and make it simple. to a large segment of our people happen. So Admiral Dasgupta and then Admiral Ashok Kumar, the vice chief, he had sort of detailed directives, and he was very clear about what we needed to do and how we needed to take this message across.
Right.
I think the naval headquarters was wonderful in the way they allowed us the leeway to execute it, but they were clear in what they wanted. So I think it was this idea largely that must involve the young Indians about naval and maritime history. I think that was the basics to it, but probably Johnson can add a bit more from the
No, and
MHS.
I mean, I would like to say on behalf of the organization that we are so proud that, we were the ones who were chosen to do this book. Because there are, of course, hundreds of children's book publishers who could have created children's book. But I think a comic book and what Amar Chitrakatha stands for is that storytelling, the visual storytelling, the iconic art. I think that is what helps children really connect. That in 32 pages, you can tell the story with this really sweeping focus and sweeping scope. So we are
Absolutely.
exceptionally proud to be doing this book.
Absolutely.
Commodore
Johnson, you want to add?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just would say that there is a larger context. Of course, one good thing the government has done is they've looked at different departments and how to bring their stories, and in a way, we have come to the armed forces and the navy doing this. But what you say is right, and Preeti is correct. Amar Chitrakatha is a ready platform. We may call it a children's book, but you will be surprised, children are tough customers. They are very tough nuts. So the whole challenge is to accurately present what you want them to learn, and yet give it in a very creative, visually appealing manner. And I think that sets apart this whole journey with the ACK team to work it, bring facts, correct, and yet make it not very boring and not like a classic history lesson of who died and who was king and that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
So great work. And so that's how we just enjoyed this journey, Preeti.
I think a lot of people in our generation and my generation will say that we don't remember what we learned in our history textbooks, but we remember the
Remember
specific panels
what we
of
read in the
Chitrakatha.
ACK. Yeah.
Yeah, that you remember. Okay.
Yeah.
So the next question is for Captain Dorai. How was this book different? Developing this book, how was it different from the normal books that you would have worked on, as a children's book and as a comic book?
Thanks for the question, ma'am. Very simple. We are actually in a very serious business, and anything light-hearted which comes up, we do take it up and we smile a lot on that. So all the
Dorai, speak
previous
a
books
little
which are,
louder. Dorai, louder and slower.
can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes,
Still
it's
a
much
Better?
little faint.
still a
Little
little
faint
faint,
still.
but that's fine.
As I was saying, we are in a bit of a serious business, the Indian Navy and the defense of the country. And when we make books in the Navy, we do write about serious topics, and the history is definitely on a serious way. So when an opportunity like this comes across, where you have to connect to children and where you have to make a book readable without what to say, making a person doze off would be this thing. It was great fun in doing this book, and the way this was my first interaction with any comic maker, to say so. And it was a learning curve for me. I've worked with big publication houses, and a bit of their business I've learned. But Mr. Neil here has been my teacher in telling how to do things, how he does things, and then I had to catch up on his curve. So it was wonderful knowing how a panel is made. I mean, as much as just one panel, and how much of discussion goes. Ms. Preeti and the children and the audience, you wouldn't believe there is one particular panel in the book of Shivaji, let's say, just one panel, which gives
I
a
know.
very big story of Shivaji in just one panel, and the amount of discussion between the three of us we've
Right.
had. Where should Shivaji be? How should Shivaji be dressed? What should
Right.
be his background? So that the whole picture is given to the children in just that one panel. Now
So you know,
that
when they make
is a very
when we watch movies and they have a making of the movie, right, behind the scenes of the movie, and they have all these shots which were never shown. I think every Amritsar comic has a story behind the story, and this one
Definitely.
has a lot of phone calls between all of you, and then some distressed calls from Neil to me saying, "Now what do I do? This is what they're saying, and I don't want to do this, or I want to do that." And it was wonderful to watch. You know, all these different. I mean, all of you, the entire team, all came from different points of view and different backgrounds, and I think that's really amazing to have that kind of discussion and that type of passion and energy into a single book, because every panel has been deliberated and thought about in so much detail, and that's what makes the book very special.
True.
Truly, both the fiction and the non-fiction sides as well, because
That's right.
we've deliberated on every character, every character's name, every look, every frame, and that's actually also been the pleasure of working with these gentlemen, because I know that the detail is always covered, which is something that we rarely get that kind of input, and it's always so lovely.
Right. So we start our journey into the series about the Indian Navy with a look into India's maritime heritage. The first book is less about the Navy itself and more about how India's journey on the seas shaped up over history. Why this approach, Commodore Johnson?
Thanks for asking that. And let me set this fact clear. There is no other approach, because today what the Navy stands for is not about guns blazing and going and destroying stuff across. Even today, the Navy, even in its military role, stands to maintain good order at sea. One of the things they say about the best military or best armed forces is that no one dares to wage war. So if you take that into a few millennia back, from the very start, whether it was culture, commerce, connectivity, Indians and people across the Indian Ocean littoral were moving across the length and breadth of the oceans. Again, it's a myth that war started only when the colonialists came by the end of the 15th century. People forget that when India's interests were hindered, Raj Rajendra Chola, one panel, okay, that's volumes. Raj Rajendra Chola launches a naval expedition across the expanse of the Bay of Bengal, attacks the Srivijaya Empire, and resumes the maintenance of good order at sea. So, as a naval historian, as a naval officer, the sea is our medium, the sea is our karmkshetra. So, in that, if you don't start, and by the way, when you start, I'm not jumping the gun here, but when we start the story, our seniors have taught it like that. We have heard of Lothal in our school books, but would you believe what kind of infrastructure existed? And then every part, people from culling, sailing boats at the correct date of the monsoons. So that kind of detail is part of a naval story. It's part of a maritime story. It's part of an Indian story. So it was very intentional that we took from the beginning of the time, come to 50, and then we get a bit more of the direct Indian naval history. So that is why this approach is no other option. It has to be part of the larger story of the medium that we are celebrating.
And which is why we have a 3-book series in store, because one
Can I
book is
just,
definitely not enough to tell the story. So this
Preeti,
first book has only taken us, but we'll talk a little bit more about that a little later. We'll save that
yeah,
question for the end.
yeah.
Uh,
I just wanted to add
Preeti,
to what Johnson said. You know that I think he summed it beautifully when he said there can be no other approach, because the Navy is in a sense of the sea, by the sea. It belongs to the sea. You know, you can't remove naval history from maritime history. And I think
True.
actually the our maritime past, great maritime past, shows both examples. What happens if we use the sea beautifully, as it happened during Cholas or other ancestors, or what happens when we ignore the seas and we become sea blind, then it results in colonialism. There's also one additional factor. We are perhaps the only service, with no disrespect to the other sister services, which is heir to two noble professions, one of seafaring and other of soldiering. So you cannot, as far as Navy is concerned, the seafaring and the soldiering are not distinct aspects, but they are congruent and they go together.
Beautiful. I think every time I interact with any of you, there's just so much to learn, and it just lots of new insights. So now the
See,
next question is,
see,
what is your favorite highlight, the favorite part of the book, or the favorite sub story from the book, or the part of the journey that you enjoyed the most? What is your lasting memory of this book? And all of you can answer that by turn.
yeah.
Dorai, go
Communication,
for it
since
first.
you're
No,
unmuted, you can.
let Dorai and Johnson answer. I'll come later.
Yeah, if you take, I mean, the whole book has a wonderful mosaic of a lot of stories coming together. So when you say one particular part, you're asking which part of history do you like? I mean, at Pangaea time, or do you like it somewhere closer? Anyway, if I were to make a choice, you know, that particular panel where we have said about the ships which were built in the Bombay dockyard, one of the oldest dockyards in the world. 1735, the Bombay dockyard was actually made. And we built a lot of ships, the pre-colonial and during the colonial times. So those ships, some of them are very famous. So you have that one particular panel where we talk of HMS Minden. In fact, I mean, the closest connect we can have to the Americans saying that their national anthem was penned by Sir Keith Scott on that ship. So that's our connect, small connect, but that's our connect. Or you take the oldest ship floating today, HMS Trincomalee. It's set up as a museum at Hartlepool, UK. And it's the oldest ship floating of all the people, the Dutch, the Norwegians, the Portuguese, or anybody who's ever built a ship. It's an Indian built ship in Bombay dockyard, which is still floating and visible to the whole world. And it has a place of pride in the seafaring community. You know, so that particular panel is really my favorite. When we say make in India, we've been making in India since a long time.
Yeah. Okay. Commodore Johnson?
Yeah, yes. So three quick things in this whole story, and I'm going to flash a previous version of the book that is there, and that is the stop part. You know what I love, and I want to say this, I'm a fan of both Preeti, you and Neil combined, because in our opening talks, we said of different ways we could tell the story. And I just shared what I did in Timeless Wake, where my father was narrating the story to Josh, my son. And when I see Commodore Sagar telling to Bharat, and you caught that, I think it just brings that fascinating combination of storytelling in the whole story.
Looks a little bit like you, right?
That was not intentional, so that was kind of thing. And the second bit is I dedicate this to late Admiral Jayant Natkarni. You know, when 2007 he fired me left, right, and center for getting some facts wrong in my paper, and then he went on to say the story, and let me put it in literally half a minute. He says India began its maritime journey. Neil was talking in the beginning, at the beginning of beginning, when it broke off from Gondwana, sailed up the Indian Ocean and crashed into the Eurasian plate, creating a maritime nation. But he added this line, unfortunately, he forgot to give that sea-mindedness into a large body of people. So when you show this crack, this, you know, that panel, I think I just adore that whole component on component. And then the third, I'm putting it third, is Boit Bandhana. When the boats are sailed from Kaling, you know, it is so precise by time to the knowledge of currents and seas. When if those boats were seaworthy, they would reach the island of Bali. And that story, when I first heard, I was given an assignment by Maritime History Society before I joined. And when that comes, it captures something of me as a navigator, where you have to learn meteorology and oceanography and currents and everything. And you have so nicely captured it in a single panel. They are my eternal favorites. Thank you for
And
doing
the
this.
fact that it's still being practiced, right, as a tradition.
Yeah.
Yes, even this Kartik Purnima, there were
to this day.
photographs.
Yeah,
Yes,
they
it's
were,
so
they were.
beautiful,
Every
right?
year.
Very, very
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah. You know, actually, if you were to ask me, what I liked the best about this experience, and I say it not in sense of a particular frame, is that I tend to sort of I'm clueless about the visual frame. You know, I tend to read and imagine, so my thinking is through the books. So translating that into drawings and seeing that come to life was an amazing experience. I must say, hats off to all your team who did the drawings. I think each one of those frames, when they sort of come to life, and you know that they are in a sense reflecting, the visual medium is reflecting what you have read and what you want to convey. I think the sense of delight that accompanied that process was wonderful. And
So,
please,
Commodore
uh,
Kessler, the storyboarding is done. The panels are ready. We can make this into a movie whenever you're ready.
absolutely.
It's all set to go to the big screen now.
I am game. I am game. Tell me when.
Awesome. So, Neil, I believe we have some questions from kids as well. So we had
Yes.
from our little readers.
So we have 3 questions from our little readers, but also before I start shooting these questions out, there are some comments, but none of them are questions. There is one particular question is which is, when do we see this in print? And the answer to that is very soon, very very soon. So if anybody has any questions, please. And of course, there's a lot of comments complimenting all 3 of you. So that is also really, really lovely. And so, shall we get to the questions from the kids? I think, Birbal, we can throw them up on screen. So, what is it like to be on a ship? What do you do for entertainment? Do you watch movies? Do you play cricket? This is from Naresh D'Souza. He's 9 years old and he's from Mumbai. I throw this open to any of you. But how about Commodore Johnson? Why don't you answer that?
Okay, great. Let me value the what Naresh as a 9-year-old has asked, and let me put it in this manner. You know what it is like to be on a ship? Who says we have a problem with the pandemic? We've been doing this all our life. We sail in the confines of a ship and just stay there always. You know, we don't go anywhere. We wake up there, we sleep there, we chat there, we fight there. We have aloo paratha there, and we enjoy the late night pickle rice. Of course, it's not just fun. The best part on a ship is you live. It is you live, you breathe, you act in that space. It's your workspace. I always say it's your karma bhumi. That's the component. And as far as entertainment is concerned, entertainment comes by fun of work. And you could have something like, if when we were junior officers, you would come down to the lounge or the wardroom and say, let's celebrate. I didn't get fired when I was on duty. So you celebrate small stuff like that. Then when the ship does a firing or shoot and you hit the target, the whole ship celebrates. You forget what your rank is. So there is a great sense of family. There is a camaraderie. And the other part of it, yes, when we get a breather, we do watch a movie. We unfortunately cannot play cricket, but on the helicopter deck, sometimes you tie a rope and you tie a ball and you can play volleyball and you can do a lot of gym. It's a complete life. A ship is a township. A ship is life in its own. Young ones, Naresh, come and join. Don't you miss this chance. You may be years ago. Come and join. It's a fascinating world.
Wonderful. That's a lovely answer, Commodore Johnson. We have a second question. I will direct this to Captain Dorai. What is it like on a submarine? Is it cold or warm? Says Shreya Srivastav. She's from Bangalore and she's 7 years old. This is a very good question, actually, because you are underwater in a tube. So I wonder whether it's hot or cold.
It's a very intelligent question. It's a very intelligent question. I mean, let's say if you are to be somebody was to be closed in a tin can, I mean, they will probably find it very hot and uncomfortable. So, how do people submarine, which is just a steel tube, what happens in that? Sh-
Yes,
This was
yeah.
Shreya, right?
Yes.
Shreya from Bangalore. So, Shreya, it is like this that as you go down the oceans, the deeper you go, the colder it gets. And by the time you go a few hundred meters, it becomes very, very cold, almost freezing temperatures. So, if you were to go there without any protection, just deep dive, it's freezing. But a submarine, the environment is controlled. It takes the water from outside, it what to say rotates it or circulates it through some heating tubes and maintains a more livable temperature. So in any submarine with so many weapons, sensors, electronics, all these have to be maintained at an air conditioned temperature of 23 degrees to 25 degrees. So the submarine maintains that environment, whether it is sailing on top in what to say hot summer, or it has gone deep down to about 300 meters in very cold waters, but still the temperature remains same, at which a person can work most efficiently. That is 23 degrees to 25 degrees. Of course, the engine rooms and all that are a little more warmer, but that's another story which you should watch out in the forthcoming books. There'll be more about it. Thank you.
Absolutely, that's really well answered. So, also a major point to everybody watching: keep your air conditioning at 24 degrees. It's best for the environment. It's best for everything. Okay, and we have a third question here. I'll ask Commodore Kesnur. You want to answer this? I want to be a naval officer. Asks Rakesh Junjunwala from Delhi at 13 years of age. He wants to be a naval officer when he grows up. What should he do now? Are there any subjects that he has to be good at?
Wow, thanks. Rakesh seems to have already heard Commodore Johnson's passionate call for people to join the Navy. I'm so happy, Rakesh, that you want to join the Navy. At 13 or 14 years, it is good to have this as a career choice. Certainly, there are different ways in which you can join the Navy. One is through the National Defense Academy or through the Indian Naval Academy, and those entries start after you do your 12th. That's about the earliest that you can join, which is when you're about 17 or 18 years. So you got enough time. Should you want to join after that, perhaps after your graduation in some streams, that also is possible, so you can decide. Now the Navy has a vast array of streams and domains and disciplines, and the naval website will give you that information. I think that information is there in the Amar Chitra Katha comic also. In the page, it tells you if you were to join, if you want to join the Navy, how do you do it, because there are different branches, different disciplines based on what is your area of interest. However, by and large, because of the nature of our job, there is overwhelming preference for people to be science and engineering graduates. In fact, as of today, everyone who passes out of the Indian Naval Academy is an engineering graduate. So it would be good if you are interested in science, if you did your 11th and 12th in science and appeared for the NDA or the Naval Academy. And then if you joined, you would get an engineering degree. So overall, it is oriented towards science. But more than that, if you're interested in flying, if you're interested in a thrilling life, if you're interested in submarines, or even the various branches that the Navy has to offer, I suggest you go to the website, because there are some where science may not be a key criteria, and you pick and choose as to what you want. And you can always get back to any of us, and we'll be very happy to advise you or any other reader of Amar Chitra Katha or any listener today as to how do they go about wanting to join, because there would be necessarily different paths for different people with different interests. But we'd welcome all of you wanting to join the Navy, and we hope that someday some of you will be sitting in my or Johnson's or Darai Babu's chair and writing about naval history.
Commodore Kesnur,
Wonderful.
at the end of the first book, it's not even the first book is just released, and we already have these questions. By the time we have all 3 books out, I think the Navy will have to get its recruitment cell really working overtime and double time to address all these queries and questions.
That's our endeavor as well.
Yes,
Wonderful.
and when that happens, we know we've done a good job too.
There's
You have. I mean, I think one of the things that has emerged out of this a wonderful collaboration is in us greater understanding of how comic books are brought out and what the difficulties, and hopefully in view of India's great maritime and naval history, and we still got 2 books to come, and how to take this across to the vast masses of people. I like we said, Neil is already converted to the maritime cause, and we hope we should be able to get you also on board very soon.
Sir, I need him in the company, please. You keep working on your projects, but the recruitment doesn't happen with Neil.
as I
I
said,
definitely need him.
I'll be the largest naval officer in the history of time. So there's a question from YouTube which says, when will these real wartime stories or history be included in school textbooks? As the textbooks reveal only 1% of the history, and there is much more to learn in the back end. Asks Aishwarya S. So maybe Preeti and I can also answer this. The answer is on your phone. It's called the ACK app. You can download it. We can't answer for the various schools and the boards. So please download it and read. Amber Johnson.
Neil, can
Yes.
yeah. Neil, this is true. While there are many people who are lamenting that the maritime component of history is not in the textbooks, but I want to update you. I stay connected with schools and colleges, and certain institutions have been taking great interest. What we have said is that we don't want to make it another. We wanted to go the ACK route. That means we capture the story right, but we pitch it at the correct level. The challenge is you take a very dry thing which a researcher could do, and when you put it exactly like that to the kids, it's going to flop. The story behind history. Even my MA history students, when they saw this ACK, they say, "I wish someone had taught us history like that in school." So
Absolutely.
there are a few schools, and we at the Maritime History Society, Commodore Kesnur gets a chance to speak. Many of us do. So there is interest from school, but translating into a full syllabus, I think the syllabus is already overloaded. So that would probably take time. But by interest, schools are already showing interest in talking about it, and we all get invites and queries on that.
And at Amachitra Katha, sir, we also do a lot of school outreach. So we
Yes.
will be also taking this book and all our books, of course, to a lot of schools. So definitely the
Preeti,
story is going to be reaching many, many more children.
I'm so glad you mentioned this, because some of the characters, I mean, Shivaji, of course, we know, but look at Abakka. We
Yeah.
talk a lot about her, and we were delighted to find that while her mention in normal school taught history is perhaps less, the ACK already has a comic on Rani
Yes,
Abakka,
absolutely.
and she's such a great heroine, such a great fighter against colonials, and an absolutely wonderful, brave leader in general. So I think Johnson makes a fair point. Of course, the lady is right, but there is interest, and we have to find out multiple ways to sort of reach them without always expecting that they be a part of the framework of the syllabus. If it is there, it's good. Otherwise, there are alternative ways to approach it.
Oh, and also, sir, today in 2020, children and students have many more ways of getting access to information. Unlike when we were children, where we only had the school
True.
book. So
True,
our job
true.
really is to give them that seed. That Rani
Yes.
Abakka's name. I know we are going to start seeing a lot more interest in a Rani Abakka comic now, because she's mentioned in this comic, right?
True.
So naturally,
True.
we will start seeing that interest as well. And of course, you have Google and you have all of the internet to go and find out more. But we have to spark that first. That first light has to be sparked in the child's mind. Then they will take off, on their own journey of exploration.
One very small point, and we keep saying child, and it is true that this is seen by children, read, and they are your primary audience. But we must not forget that there are millions of adults who read Amar Chitra Katha and delight in it as much. I guess it's a cumulative and collective enjoyment that people get when they read the Amar Chitra Katha, not just the children but adults.
There is no upper age limit for Amar Chitra
Yeah,
Katha.
there's no upper age limit.
There is no upper age limit. So I think we're almost running out of time, but I do have a question for all of you and for Neil as well. That what are the plans for book 2 and 3? What can our readers look forward to? So book 1 is more of a maritime history of India in a sense. When does the action of the Navy start making its, the Indian Navy as we know it today, when do we start reading about that? What's there in book 2 and book 3?
Oh,
Commodore Johnson, would you like to answer that?
Or Commodore Kessler, whichever, whoever.
Yeah, actually, it's Commodore Kesnur is looking at the whole thing. So I think he will share best. We are all in it together, but he's been actively with the Naval History Project. So Shrikant sir, over to you.
Thanks. Of course, Neil Johnson and Dorai. I think when we discussed the contours, it was sort of one of the biggest problems was how do we divide this? And I think early on there was a realization that hell, just 3 books won't do. I mean, there's so much to say. But having sort of decided that the first book would be on the journey right through the first aspects, as we say, Gondwana and Pangaea, up to 1947. Book 2 focuses on Navy's journey from 1947 onwards until 2020, because the Indian Navy has, we call it a silent service, but it has been able to do such wonderful things, not just in War of 1971, but in several humanitarian missions, diplomacy, in several disciplines where we have established world-class excellence. So we hope to tell the story of the growth and development of Indian Navy in book 2. And in book 3, we hope to focus on a few personalities, some heroes, some icons, some leaders, some sportsmen, all of whom from the Navy who contributed to the country. We are calling them Tales of Glory. So it represents all the people from the Navy who've done not just the Navy, but the nation proud in different ways. But again, I must go back to tell you that hopefully Amar Chitra Katha will take the hint. The Navy has so many stories to tell that perhaps 3 is not enough.
I was about to say that book, the challenge for book 3 is going to be really difficult. Which ones are you going to choose, right? Which heroic operations, which heroes, and who are you going to actually pick? It's going to be very, very difficult.
And often each one of them deserves an independent book, because very often it happens that the naval heroes, because of the way navies function, as we say, beyond the horizon, naval heroes and naval activities don't get that kind of traction that many other people, even in the sister services, do. So each of these heroes, each of these great men deserves a book. So that's going to be difficult. And like we said, we hope that it is going to start a cottage industry on Indian naval and maritime heroes as far as Amar Chitra Katha is concerned.
Wonderful. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think we're out of time, Neil, nearly at the end.
Preeti, you want to take one more question, or are we done?
We can take one more question.
Yeah. So I want to ask this question only as a teaser for book 2, which is, can you share your experience on board an aircraft carrier? It's from K. Omkara Sharma. This is actually why I said it's a teaser for book 2, is that book 2 and book 3 are all about the experiences of being in the Navy. This also sort of answers Advita's question of how do you feel when you are sailing into a war situation. So if I can combine the two and say, can you share your experience on board an aircraft carrier, or when you're heading towards a situation which is precarious and scary?
So Shrikant sir, can I take the aircraft carrier and the thing? So I've had the privilege of being on board now, of course, cut up get in the process of getting cut up Indian naval ship Virat for almost 2 years. And it's a very simple answer I'll give. That's an organization, a living set of people and steel that never sleeps. You have a flat top deck, and you could have one place where just aircraft are zipping, taking off, or some landing one after the other from a distance almost like JFK airport. It could be that moment, and the other moment you just quiet. There's a quiet evening, and people could be walking on deck. The other side is when you make your own bread, you could be making in a few thousand freshly baked oven bread. That's on the other end where there are cooks who are working. You could have the engineers who may not surface. You dare to step into a boiler room, I'm telling you, you will be worse than a sauna. So those are the engines that drive this ship. And then, of course, the technical staff and others who are getting aircraft ready. The aircraft goes down on a lift. And in short, it's a hub and a beehive of activity. And you have over 2,000 compartments. I'm talking now of Vikramaditya. And you have, and everything going in a very cohesive, coherent manner. It's the ultimate organization, and it's been my proudest moment to have served on an aircraft carrier. It's another world at sea. It's completely sovereign territory over whatever that 28,000 tons takes India wherever it can go.
Wow, I get
And
goosebumps just listening to that.
Yeah.
That's so inspiring. My God.
Neil and Preeti, Johnson has answered the first part, and I think there's not. Fortunately, none of us have been in wars, which also tells you that the importance of navies and militaries is not just to fight, but to prevent and deter wars. And that's
Absolutely.
one thing that the Navy has been doing magnificently. But we have faced lots of tough situations. And to answer that, I'll request Dorai, because we seem to forget that Dorai is actually a gallantry award winner. He is one of those heroes amongst us, and he won his gallantry award in the tsunami of 2004. So he is a hero, and he's faced one of those tough situations. So maybe we could ask him to describe how he felt in that operation and what he did.
So,
Thank you, sir. I mean, that was in 2004, and when we sailed out of Vizag and headed for the Andaman Islands after the tsunami had struck. In fact, we sailed out within 8 hours of the tsunami striking, when the water was still turbulent. We weren't thinking much. We were in fact trying to just get the ship out to sea and thinking what could be the scenario out there that we are going to meet. No, there was no tension. There was a bit of pressure as how we would perform. And once we reached the islands and saw the devastation, you don't think on that situation as to what do you need to do. You just do. You just act. So one particular incident for which I was actually awarded the thing was there were a group of missionaries stranded in a very remote island, and I had gone in a very small boat after sunset, no lights, nothing. And there were no second thoughts in my head when I was going there, since I just knew that I had to reach there, give them help, or get them on board and do whatever necessary to make them feel safe. That's the only idea. So reached there, and there was a few tremors. Boat got lifted, overturned, then put the boat right. I had my team with me, of course. We worked on the engines. One part went and got these people. So there was one particular gentleman who was very badly injured in the actual wave. So we took him, and like by that time I had lost all bearings, no navigation equipment on that boat. So I went actually by the stars. The previous day we were discussing stars with the commanding officer, and went by the stars and found the ship after some time, and we were able to save that person. If we hadn't done it, it was more likely that he would have lost his life, but we were able to save him. That is the end result. There's nothing more to it. We don't think in what situation we are stepping in. Of course we do think, how to tackle a situation, but we never think whether we need to go into a situation to save somebody's life. It's that way. Thank you.
Again, that gave me goosebumps, Captain Lorai. We are all so grateful for the way you all think. Actually, like you said, you don't think, right? It's just that you've been trained to act in that moment, and that is just so inspiring.
Honestly, thank you for your service, all three of you. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
On that very, very inspiring note, it's time for us to bring the session to a close. So, Captain Dorai, Commodore Johnson, Commodore Kesnu, thank you so much for everything, for the adventure we've had over the last 8 months, creating
Thank
this
you.
first book, and the adventure continues. And thank you for
Yeah,
joining us today and sharing such exciting. We rarely have so many interesting things to talk about. When we're launching books, it was a very, really, really invigorating and inspiring session. Neil, any closing comments from you?
No, thank you. And now you all in the audience know how lovely my job is, which is that I am privileged to have these conversations all the time. So thank you
Neil,
so
we are
much.
not hijacking you. We'll leave you at ACK to do better
Thank you,
books.
sir. Thank you. It's grateful. So
thanks
once
a lot.
again,
It's been wonderful.
once again for our viewers and readers, ACK app, please go download it. The book is available for 2 days as an absolutely free read. It's a special gesture to commemorate the launch of the book itself. So 18, 19, 20th for 3 days you can read it free. After which it's a paid subscription. And the book in print will be available in January, so you can look forward to buying a printed copy then. By which time we'll be ready to announce a date for the launch of book 2. So
And three.
I would say just watch out for book 2 and book 3. If this was interesting, those are really interesting.
I agree, absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a lovely evening. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good day.
Bye.